In a rare incident in the Russian capital after months of war, Russia is blaming Ukraine for launching a drone attack on Moscow early on Tuesday, which reportedly left 2 people injured and several buildings damaged. According to the Russian state news agency, at least 3 residential buildings were damaged in Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin has accused Kyiv of seeking to frighten Russians after drones hit Moscow's high-rises.
As you know, the Kyiv regime has chosen a different path, the path of attempts to intimidate Russia, Russian citizens, and attacks on residential buildings. This is, of course, a clear sign of terrorist activities. First, I want to say that the Moscow air defense system worked in the regular way, although there are things for us to work on.
While incidents in Moscow are uncommon, on the other hand, Russia's UAVs continued their attacks on Kyiv for a third straight day. Meanwhile, the U.S. says it does not support attacks inside Russia. Yesterday's attacks were the first time that the unmanned aerial vehicles hit residential areas of Moscow, hundreds of kilometers from the front lines in Ukraine. In Washington, the White House said it was still gathering information on the reports of drones striking in Moscow. Washington is a major supplier of weaponry to Ukraine on the condition it uses it to defend itself and to retake Ukrainian territory occupied by Russian forces. Here's what the White House press secretary said.
We do not support attacks inside of Russia. That's it. Period. I mean, I cannot be any more clear than what I just stated. We do not support attacks inside of Russia. Period. We've been very clear about that. That's been a general matter that you have heard from us over and over again this past several months, and I cannot be more clear than that.
According to few Russian officials, drones even attacked 2 oil refineries some 80 kilometers east of Russia's biggest oil export terminals. A fire broke out at the Apsky refinery, but was later extinguished, and a drone crashed into the Ilsky refinery without damaging it. Since Moscow launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor last February, there have been a handful of incidents within Russian territory earlier this month. 2 unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed over the Kremlin in a murky attack that Russia blamed on Kyiv. Moscow claimed it was an attempt to target Russian President Vladimir Putin, which Kyiv has forcefully denied. But as Ukraine and Russia keep on attacking each other with drones, NATO foreign ministers are meeting for a 2-day informal meeting in the Norwegian capital of Oslo. NATO leaders have been facing a complicated dilemma. How can they address Kyiv's push to join the military alliance without offering an immediate path to membership? Well, for more on this, we are being joined by John Erath from Washington, D.C. He is a senior policy director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. John, welcome back to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. Are we entering a new phase of the war with these attacks inside Russian territory?
At this point, it is not clear exactly what the nature of the attack was and who exactly was responsible. It's presumed that the drone attacks came from Ukraine or from pro-Ukrainian forces operating inside Russia, but that is not clear yet. So it's difficult to comment until we know what all the facts are. If these are Ukrainian attacks inside of Russia against civilian areas of Moscow, that is something that is against the international law and is ordinarily something that should be avoided in an armed conflict, the targeting of civilian populations. Now, the Ukrainians would say that this has happened on a far greater scale in their country with regard to Russian attacks. But that does not change the nature of the incident. So it's something that should certainly be discouraged on both sides of the war, this targeting of civilian populations. But that said, that is where we are going with warfare in the 21st century. The technologies, including drones, are increasingly available. They're easy to obtain. And I think we're going to see more attacks of this kind, not just in Ukraine and Russia, but worldwide in any kind of conflict.
U.S. officials are looking into reports that American-made military equipment was used by pro-Ukrainian Russian militia during an attack along the Russian border a few days ago in Belgorod. What about this? When the United States says that it's not party to the war, it does not support any attack in Russian territory, but then U.S.-made weapons are found when Ukraine or Ukrainian forces or forces sympathetic to Ukraine decide to go inside Russia and attack Russia. Where do we stand on that?
Once again, it's difficult to comment until all the facts are clear. The U.S. has been very clear when providing weaponry to Ukraine that it is to be used for defensive purposes only, to liberate Ukrainian territory that is occupied by Russia. The supply of such equipment is very important to the Ukrainian war effort, and so Ukraine would be very stupid to endanger that supply of weapons and other equipment that is coming in. So I think it unlikely that this would be used except by a mistake in the case of a Ukrainian attack on Russian territory.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll be watching these developments very closely, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon on WION.
Thank you for inviting me.